Welcome back. Now, businesses and households have had to learn to deal with continuous blackouts gripping the country. Newly elected, or rather appointed, Electricity Minister Kgosientso Ramokgopa has been visiting several Eskom power stations across the country, this in an effort to find a solution to ending the power cuts. Well, City Power has also visited specific sites that have been vandalized in Johannesburg as blackouts continue. Our reporter eNCA's Manqoba Mchunu is tracking that story for us and joins us now. Manqoba, good afternoon to you, colleague. I mean, what have you found, just in as far as City Power is concerned, as they also conduct some of those, affected areas? This in line with, obviously, the Electricity Minister visiting power stations across the country.
Well, Tumelo, one of the areas that City Power has visited is the area of Ekenhof, which is next to the Ekenhof pumping station, the Rainwater Ekenhof pumping station, which of course we know has been hit by quite a number of incidents of vandalism in just a few recent days. In fact, you recall, Tumelo, that just last week there were several suburbs in Johannesburg, in the south of Johannesburg, that had no water due to the issues of some of the infrastructure damage that was as a result of cable theft at the Ekenhof pump station. So they also visited a community just next to Ekenhof, which is Naturena, of course, where they are now installing overhead power lines to try and deal with this particular issue. But what they're saying, Tumela, is that just this area alone of Naturena, there's been just over 2 million rand worth of cables that have been stolen in this area alone in just the past 12 months in this area. And of course, it is quite concerning for them because this is money that they had not, prepared for to spend on this particular issue. But what they're also saying, Tumela, is that as far as the city is concerned, when you look at the issue of cable theft, this amounts to about 3 million rands a day worth of cable theft, as well as damage to some of their substations. And what they're saying, Tumela, of course, is that this is also further made worse by the fact that there is a load shedding in some of these areas. But earlier on, I spoke to the CEO of City Power just about some of these issues, and in fact during that briefing they also outlined just the losses that the city has incurred. Of course, this also affects businesses as well as households that are left without power for many hours, even though sometimes you'll find that load shedding has ended. They'll find themselves in the dark because of some of these issues of cable theft. And take a listen to Melo to what she says is really, the problem as far as cable theft is concerned.
For Naturena alone, I think recently we're looking at something like 2.1 million rands, right? The losses in the area. But broadly, in a 12-month period, it's easily over 2,000 incidents of cable theft. Now, if we can talk about 2 million in terms of one area, you can imagine how much that is. So we've definitely lost hundreds of millions where cable theft is concerned. And it's not just the cable theft, it's also the theft of other infrastructure such as our mini substations. I mean, we found ourselves in a period where on a daily basis we'll wake up with 1, 2 or 3 mini subs stolen, and one mini sub cost us about 500,000 rands. So you're looking at a region where we are losing about 3 million rands a day, from mini subs. So when you look at it, it's the fact that we are losing the material. We must replace that key material and equipment. There's labor costs that come there. There's the cost of unserved energy, because at that time, obviously, the customers are off. But it also affects quality of supply. It affects us in terms of energy losses in the future. So in a given year, when we combine, the technical losses, because also the infrastructure is old, the non-technical losses, the theft and all of that, it can easily be about over 4 billion rands that we lose when you look at everything else. Hence, there's a dedicated effort in also renewing the infrastructure so that we can bring that down and also find mechanism of deterring energy theft and mechanism of ensuring that our infrastructure is not stolen.
So, Manqoba, I mean, what is City Power aiming to do just in terms of dealing with blackouts in certain areas? Because we know that certain residents have been complaining that beyond the schedule, this is the load shedding schedule, they would still be without electricity.
Well, what they're looking at, are some of the options of trying perhaps to move some of these cables. And in fact, this is one of the projects that they've started now here in the south of Johannesburg, where they've literally, removed some of those underground cables. They've replaced them with less valuable aluminium or overpower cables that are not on the ground anymore, because they're saying that what complicates issues as far as load shedding is concerned is that in some of the instances you find that the criminals take advantage when there's load shedding, and they will then vandalize and steal some of this infrastructure. And what makes it even quite problematic as far as fixing those cables is that when it rains, you'll find that they're not easily able to replace some of those cables, which results in some of the areas being affected for longer hours. But of course, also when it comes to some of the infrastructure, it cannot deal with the surges of power when it comes back during load shedding. So it will cause trips on some of that infrastructure. And of course, they're looking at ways to try and mitigate this. And of course, they're saying that one of the ways that they're looking into is to try and bring perhaps more power into the grid. As the city, they're looking at other various areas, getting electricity from other areas, including Kevin as well as Ekurhuleni, to provide some power to the city so that they can at least, deal with the issues of power outages, but also try perhaps avoid lower stages of load shedding like stage 1, should they have that power brought to the grid. But also looking at various measures as far as renewable energy is concerned. They're saying that there's a plan to install solar electricity on some of the city's buildings. But the city is saying that load shedding does create a bit of a problem as far as the electricity and cable theft is concerned in the city, because they say this is when they see most of those issues, the cable theft, that is, as well as some of the outages, the problems with outages at some of the areas. But the CEO also spoke about this issue, and this is what she had to say.
Load shedding is a definite factor, because you publicize, you say to everybody around this time, the infrastructure is not going to be live. And obviously the criminals find it fitting at that point in time to steal. I mean, recently MMC, 3 weeks or so back in the Ramsek area, it was the same thing. We just replaced some cables, kilometer of a cable, and then immediately after that, 4 hours later, because then there was load shedding, they came in and then they stole that as well. So it is a vicious circle. We do need to ensure that we do something about load shedding. City Power's Energy Management Division has been hard at work in terms of putting mechanism to ensure that we find exclusion, at least up to stage 3